She had gone behind my back, convinced me to sign a few routine documents that I never really looked at, and transferred everything into her name. The house? Hers. The company? Hers. Our joint savings? Hers. She even had the gall to offer me a job at my own company, saying, "I think it's best if you just focus on what you do best without the stress of running the business." I was too stunned to speak. Within 24 hours, I went from being a business owner to a homeless, jobless idiot. She and Jeff took everything, and the worst part? She smirked as I walked out the door with nothing but a duffel bag. For the first year, I was an emotional wreck. I slept on my friend's couch, drank too much, and replayed that scene over and over in my head. But then, something inside me snapped. I realized that Sarah and Jeff had no idea what they were doing. They weren't business people. They had no real skills, no vision, just greed. That company was running on my expertise. So I decided if they wanted to steal my company, I was going to steal it back. I started small. I reached out to my old clients, former business partners, even employees who left because they couldn't stand Sarah and Jeff's incompetence. I played the long game, acting like I was just exploring new opportunities. And what do you know? Most of them hated Sarah and Jeff. It wasn't hard to convince them to wait. Just hold off, I told them. Give it a year. Meanwhile, I took my knowledge and started a competing business. Same product, but better, more efficient, more innovative, and more importantly, I poached their best employees. Sarah and Jeff didn't notice at first. They were too busy spending money. Lavish vacations, expensive cars, the whole cliche. They weren't reinvesting in the business, and it started to crumble. And then came the final blow. I had kept tabs on their finances, and I knew they were bleeding money. That's when I made my move. I hired a private investigator to go through the records. Turns out, in a desperate attempt to keep the company afloat, they had started fudging numbers. Classic tax fraud. You know what happens when you commit tax fraud? Yeah, the IRS doesn't like that. I tipped them off anonymously with detailed evidence. It took about 6 months, but then, boom, the audit hit them like a truck. Accounts frozen, legal fees piling up, and Jeff, he took the fall for it all and went to prison. But I wasn't done. Since Sarah and Jeff couldn't pay their mounting debts, they started defaulting on loans. Their office lease? I bought it. Their warehouse? I bought it. And just when Sarah thought she could salvage something, I outbid her at every turn. The business dead. Her money gone. Her husband? Inmate number 54783. I'm now running an even more successful business, engaged to a woman who actually supports me. And guess where Sarah is? She's working retail, barely scraping by, living in a tiny apartment with nothing left. One of my old employees ran into her and told me she looked miserable. I never even had to say a word to her. She just watched everything she stole from me crumble in front of her eyes. Revenge? Oh, it was served. How could this ever have possibly happened? Somebody that's willing to go behind somebody's back, steal everything from another person, and then turn around and spend it all on lavish trips and whatnot. I'm really surprised that a person like that couldn't keep a functional business going. I think it's pretty obvious that they were in over their heads from the get-go. They just wanted OP's money, and they managed to pretty much blow it all, did they not? Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. That said, our next story is, coworker framed me and got me fired, so I took his career. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to hold a grudge, but when someone destroys your career, you either roll over or you fight back. And I fought back. My coworker, let's call him Kevin, because honestly, he was the walking definition of a Kevin. Kevin was my coworker at a mid-sized marketing firm. I was a senior analyst, well-respected, and honestly, I loved my job. Kevin, he was a snake. The kind of guy who takes credit for other people's work, charms his way up the ladder, and does the bare minimum while making himself look like a star. Kevin had been gunning for my job for months. Every meeting, he would find ways to undermine me. Subtle things, like planting doubts about my work ethic, suggesting I might be overworked and making mistakes. And because he was so charming, nobody ever suspected of him of anything. I brushed it off, thinking he was just another office ladder climber. I was wrong. One morning I walked into work and security was waiting for me. HR called me into a meeting and laid out evidence that I'd been stealing company data and was to frame someone if you knew the right access points. That was all I needed. Since I couldn't access the company's systems, I went the social route. I created a fake LinkedIn profile posing as a recruiter from a top competitor. I reached out to Kevin saying we were impressed by his work and wanted to discuss a high-paying job opportunity. Of course, his ego ate it up. Over a few weeks, we courted him, dropping hints that we knew he had access to sensitive industry insights. Kevin, being the moron he was, couldn't resist bragging, and then he made a critical mistake. He admitted in an email that he had planted files to get me fired. He boasted that he had done it so cleanly, no one could ever trace it back to him. That was game over. I compiled everything, screenshots, emails, even a recorded Zoom call where he let it slip that he had gotten rid of a problem at his last job by setting them up. Then, I sent all of it to HR. I sent all of it to HR, the legal team, and, just for fun, the CEO himself. And just to twist the knife, I anonymously leaked it to the industry's biggest news outlets. Kevin was instantly fired, but it gets better. The company filed a lawsuit against him for corporate espionage and fraud. He was blacklisted from the industry. No one would touch him. Last I heard, he had to move states and is working some dead-end sales job. As for me, once Kevin was exposed, my old firm reached out to apologize. They offered me my job back. I declined. I'd already started my own consulting firm, making twice the money. Kevin thought he could ruin my life. Instead, he destroyed his own. You can tell this Kevin guy is such a slime ball. Anybody in a situation like that who is so smug and feel like they're so impenetrable that because they got away with it, that they can just openly talk about it like as if what they did wasn't completely illegal. It's like when the supervillain gets the upper hand and like the Incredibles points out, they just start monologuing. Our next story is, my wife cheated, so I ruined her future. I'd been with my wife, Emily, for 10 years, married for 6. We met in college, built a life together, and I thought she was my person. Turns out she was just waiting for an upgrade. I travel a lot for work, which should have been my first red flag, but I trusted her. She worked remotely as a freelance designer, so she was always home. No suspicion, no weird behavior, until one day, my buddy, who works in IT security, called me out of nowhere. He said, "Hey man, you should probably check your home Wi-Fi logs." I had no idea what he was talking about. Apparently, he was helping me set up a smart security system months ago and had access to some back-end logs. He wasn't spying or anything, but something caught his eye. My Wi-Fi showed a specific device connecting every time I was out of town, and it wasn't mine. I told him to send me the MAC address, and I waited. A few days later, I left for a fake work trip, parked my car a few streets down, and walked back home. Sure enough, I saw it, some random dude's truck in my driveway. My heart was pounding. I was shaking, but I wasn't about to burst in like an idiot. I took pictures, noted the time, and left. Over the next few weeks, I dug deeper. I put a GPS tracker in her car. I checked phone records. I even pulled her credit card statements. She wasn't just having a one-time affair. This had been going on for over a year. Romantic dinners, hotels, even a weekend trip that I thought she had taken with her girls. The dude? My boss. That's right, my direct manager at work. The guy who controlled my salary, my promotions, everything. I felt nauseous. I wanted to rage, but I played it smart. I gathered everything. Screenshots of texts, proof of their meetups, even a voice recording from our security camera where they joked about how clueless I was. And then I waited. A month later, during our company's biggest annual meeting, I submitted an anonymous complaint to HR detailing everything. My boss was married too, with kids. The company had a zero-tolerance policy for workplace affairs, especially when it involved a direct subordinate spouse. HR launched a full investigation. Within a week, he was fired. His wife divorced him immediately. He lost everything: his job, his family, his reputation. As for Emily, I served her divorce papers the same day. Because of my meticulous record-keeping, my lawyer obliterated her in the settlement. We had a prenup, but it had an infidelity clause. She walked away with nothing. The The last time I heard about her, she was living with her parents, unemployed, and ranting on Facebook about how unfair life was. I don't regret a thing. I'm gonna be honest, the friend is a homie here, seeing that and mentioning it to OP, but does anybody else agree that he had to be snooping? Like, OP was so quick to say, oh, they weren't spying or anything, but somehow they managed to notice that every time OP was out of town, new devices popped up. Like, how do you notice a discrepancy so specific like that without actually doing some kind of like Snoopy watching? Our next story is, my neighbor killed my dog, so I took his home. I don't consider myself a violent man, but when someone hurts my family, all bets are off. And my family included my golden retriever Max. Max was more than just a pet. He was my shadow, my best friend, my actual therapy dog after I lost my wife 5 years ago. He never left my side. He was the best boy, and everyone loved him except my neighbor Paul. Paul was a bitter old bee who hated everything that brought joy. Kids playing outside, he would call the cops. Someone mowing their lawn too early, he would throw a tantrum. Max, he despised him. Max never bothered him, but Paul would glare at him through the fence. He once threatened to get rid of him if he ever set foot on his property. I didn't take it seriously. I should have. One day, Max went missing. I tore through the neighborhood looking for him, posted flyers, knocked on doors, nothing. Then my security camera picked something up. Paul, standing by the fence, throwing something over into my yard. Some kind of meat. I confronted him. He denied it. I called the cops. They said unless I had actual proof that he poisoned my dog, there was nothing they could do. I was shattered, but I wasn't done. I became obsessed with ruining this man. I started by getting petty, reporting every minor violation on his property, his unkempt lawn, the junk in his yard, his illegally parked car. But that wasn't enough. I needed to end him. Paul was a hoarder. His house was packed with garbage, old furniture, rotting food, you name it. I did some digging and found out he was violating multiple city codes, so I reported him over and over. Health inspectors came, fines piled up. Then they condemned his house. He was given 90 days to clean it up or lose it. But Paul, he was lazy. He ignored it. And when he said he took possession of his home, guess who bought it? Me, for pennies. The first thing I did after getting the deed, I bulldozed that rotting heck hole to the ground. Paul had to move into a trailer park on the edge of town, and from what I hear, he never recovered. As for me, I built a new garden where his house used to be, a quiet place, a peaceful place, a place where I buried Max right where he belonged. Rest easy, buddy. I got him back for you. Man, I didn't expect to get so many feels right at the very end of that story. OP literally had their John Wick origin story. Can we just talk about how upsetting it is, though, that in situations like this, the cops go, sorry, nothing we can do, your dogs aren't all that valuable to us. Our next story is, my childhood bully became a cop, so I made him a criminal. I never thought I'd see his face again. Brian was my personal nightmare in middle school. Not the kind of bully who just called you names. No, Brian went all in. He once locked me in a locker for 3 hours. He spread a nasty rumor that I was easy, which led to me getting harassed for years. And when I finally snapped and fought back, I got suspended while he got a slap on the wrist because his uncle was a cop. He made my life heck until high school, when he dropped out. I thought that was the last I'd hear of him. Fast forward to last year. I'm sitting in a coffee shop, minding my business, when I hear a voice behind me order a drink. A voice I hadn't heard in over a decade, but one that immediately made my stomach twist. I turn around, it's Brian in a police uniform. I thought there's no way this piece of trash became a cop. But oh, he did. And the worst part, he recognized me. He smirked and said, hey, I remember you. Still a crybaby? I said nothing, but inside I was boiling. A guy like Brian in a position of power? No way in heck I was letting that slide. I started digging. It didn't take long to find dirt. Small town, big mouths. A few calls, some friendly drinks with old classmates, and I got the golden ticket. Brian hadn't changed. He was still a bully, only now he had a badge. He'd been caught roughing up suspects, but he got away with it. He had multiple complaints of harassment from women, some of whom were too scared to come forward. And the best part? He was dealing drugs on the side. Yeah, big bad Officer Brian was selling weed and coke to teenagers. I had proof, screenshots of texts, witness accounts, even a recording of a former client talking about his side hustle. So, I set the trap. I tipped off internal affairs, but I knew they would protect him unless there was undeniable proof. So I made sure there was. One of my old friends, who Brian had no reason to suspect, set up a buy. He wore a wire, everything was recorded, and when Brian showed up to the meeting, so did the FBI. Not only was he arrested, but because he was a cop involved in drug trafficking, he got the maximum penalty. 10 years, no parole. When they took him away in cuffs, I made sure to be right there smiling. The last words I said to him, "Still a tough guy?" It just does not surprise me in the least that a guy like this goes on to become a police officer. I mean, first of all, his uncle was a cop and bailed him out countless times, so he's probably already going to be attracted to it for that reason alone. But also, there is unfortunately like a subsection of police officers who do it for the power and control that they can have. And honestly, in some places, it's not very well regulated, and in a matter of 6 months, anybody can really become one. Our next story is, scammer stole my mom's life savings, so I took his freedom. My mom is the sweetest woman on the planet. She's in her 60s, retired, and spends most of her time volunteering at the local shelter. She's the kind of person who would give the shirt off her back to help someone in need, which is probably why she got targeted. One day, she called me in hysterics. She had lost everything. Her savings, her emergency fund, even part of her pension. A man claiming to be from her bank had called, saying her account was compromised. Long story short, they walked her through a fake security process that let them drain her accounts. Over $120,000 gone. She was devastated. And me? I was furious. The bank said there was nothing they could do. The cops will file a report, but these cases rarely go anywhere. Yeah, no, not good enough. I dug deep. I work in cybersecurity, so I knew where to start. The scammer had used VoIP calls to mask his location, but that wasn't enough to hide from me. I traced the origin to a call center in India, but that wasn't who I was after. I wanted the ringleader. It took weeks, but I finally found a lead. A money mule in my own city, some low-level guy who withdrew and transferred stolen funds for a cut. I tailed him for 2 weeks, watched where he went, who he met with, and then I hacked his email. That's when I found everything. Spreadsheets of stolen accounts, scripts for scamming elderly people, payment records leading back to their boss. Bingo. Now, I just needed proof. Since I couldn't access the company's systems, I went the social route. I created a fake LinkedIn profile, posing as a recruiter from a big-name financial institution. I reached out to the scam boss, telling him we were looking for experienced financial experts with discreet backgrounds. He ate it up. Within a few weeks, he was bragging about his operation. He thought he was about to land a high-paying job laundering money for big clients. What he didn't know, every single conversation was recorded, every email logged, and then I dropped it all in the lap of the FBI and Interpol. Within a month, there were raids across 3 countries. The entire scam ring was dismantled. The ringleader arrested and sentenced to 15 years for fraud and money laundering. And my mom? The bank magically found a way to refund every single penny once they realized the news was covering it. Scammer thought he could ruin my mom's life. Now his is over. I'm just gonna listen to everything OP said and just assume they're like Jim Browning or something. Like one of these YouTubers who fights back against these scam call centers, most often in India, who actually managed to like reverse engineer and hack into their computers and are capable of doing things like looking through their own security camera feeds in the call center. Like without any extra context, you would hear a story like OP's and go, oh, that's just completely unrealistic, but that kind of stuff does kind of happen. Our next story is, my best friend stole my inheritance, so I made sure he had nothing left. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to plot revenge. I always believed in karma and letting life handle things. But when you watch someone you trusted more than anyone in the world steal from you and then smile in your your face like nothing happened, something inside you changes. This is the story of how my best friend of 20 years stole my inheritance and how I made sure he ended up with nothing. I grew up in a small town, the kind where everyone knows everyone. My parents weren't rich, but they were smart with money, and my dad especially believed in investing. Real estate, stocks, even rare collectibles. Over time, he built a small fortune. Not yachts and mansions rich, but enough that when my parents tragically passed in a car accident, I was left with a house, a substantial savings account, and a portfolio of assets worth over $300,000. It was a life-changing amount for someone like me, and I'd always known that my dad worked hard to make sure that I had a safety net. Enter Ethan, my best friend since we were kids. We did everything together. Grew up side by side, got in trouble together. Heck, we even started a small business together when we were 19. I trusted him completely. So when I was going through my parents' estate, drowning in paperwork, grief, and legal nonsense, I did what felt natural. I leaned on Ethan. He helped me go through the documents, sort out accounts, and most importantly, deal with the legal transfer of everything my parents left me. He always had a way of simplifying things, and when he offered to set up a financial trust for me, I didn't even hesitate. I should have. The trust was a trap. What I didn't realize at the time was that Ethan was slowly draining my accounts. He took small amounts at first, just a few thousand here and there, things I might not notice. But then he got greedy. One day I logged into what I thought was my inheritance account and saw a balance that made my stomach drop. $1,200. There had been over $200,000 in that account the last time I checked. I went numb. I called Ethan. No answer. I drove to his house. Gone. This man, my best friend of 20 years, had taken everything and vanished. I found out later that he had cleared out my accounts, sold the stock portfolio, even transferred the deed of my parents' house into his name, and then he disappeared. Or at least he thought he did. Ethan wasn't a criminal mastermind, he was just opportunistic and stupid, and he made one huge mistake. He underestimated how far I'd go to get my revenge. The hunt. I spent months tracking him down. I hired a PI, called in every favor I was owed, and eventually found out that he had moved to a different state, living large with my money. He had bought a new car, rented a luxury apartment, and even started a business with my stolen funds. I was beyond rage, but I didn't go straight for him. I wanted him ruined, so I got smart. First, I gathered every bit of evidence I had. Bank records showing the withdrawals, emails and texts of him managing my inheritance, the fraudulent trust documents that had his name on them. I took it all to a lawyer, one of the best in fraud litigation. And then I made sure the IRS knew about him. Ethan never paid a single cent in taxes on the money he stole. I tipped off both federal and state tax agencies, providing every document they needed. While that was in motion, I posed as a potential investor and got a meeting with his new company. He had no idea it was me setting him up. I recorded every conversation, gathered every shady detail about his business, and compiled a report so detailed it made him look like a Ponzi schemer. Then I leaked it everywhere. The ruin. First came the IRS investigation. They froze his accounts, seized his assets, and slapped him with massive tax fraud penalties. Then came the lawsuit. The courts ruled in my favor. Not only was he forced to return every penny he could, but since he had committed outright fraud, he was personally liable for damages. He had to sell everything. His car? Gone. His business? Collapsed overnight. And finally, the criminal charges. Ethan was arrested for fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny. He took a plea deal that got him 6 years in prison. The aftermath? I got my money back. It took time, but through a combination of legal action and asset recovery, I managed to reclaim about $180,000 of what was stolen. The house? Mine again, but the real victory, Ethan has nothing left. No job, no business, no money, and for the next 6 years, he gets to think about how he threw away everything for greed. I hope he enjoys his time in prison. I know I will. Money just makes some people do nasty things, man. There's that opportunity to just grab some fat stacks and try to run off into the night with it. Some people are more than happy ruining their lives trying to gamble on getting away with it. Our next